Everybody wants to talk about deal flow, underwriting, and returns. But the problem is most real estate investors overlook the skill that actually determines long-term success, and that's leadership. Today, we're going to be breaking down the key leadership traits that separate average investors from the great ones and how you can develop them starting now. John, it's great to be here with you.
So good to be here, Mark, and love talking leadership. I've been on a lot of podcasts as a guest recently with leadership being the topic. And, it's an area where you see it a lot, particularly in politics, a lot of finger pointing. Nobody wants to take responsibility, and I would say that in a sense, I feel like leadership is often lacking, once again, particularly in government. And so, I know for you and I, when we first met, it was a lot of what we talked about. Just, how do you become a better leader? How are you more effective at leadership? And so I'm excited for today's talk. I think it's a topic that, you and I could probably talk about for hours and hours and hours. So looking forward to today.
Yep. For sure. And if you are looking for a great real estate deal and you're looking for good leaders to lead the real estate deal, go to fulloutinvesting.com. You'll see our 10-step full out investing process and a sample deal as well. And you can book a one-on-one call through Calendly. You can easily book that with John and myself there to learn more. So yes, John, leadership. I think it all starts with leadership. When we jumped into the business, real estate was, okay, you buy an asset. In the past for me, and we invested in millions of dollars of real estate, from single family homes all the way up to office buildings and apartments in the larger units now. But the thing that was interesting is in the past was like you're buying an existing property, one unit, one house, and it's like leadership wasn't as important. It still is as the main driver. But when you start to get into the larger multifamily, leadership becomes a very, very, very important aspect of it, because you are basically the rainmaker of everything. And I've seen really decent deals turn great, and great deals go the other way around because of lack of leadership. And so it all starts, they say that in companies, that it starts from the head down, just like a fish rots from the head down. John, I think that's right still. I think a fish does rot from the head down. Somebody said, that's not true. I'm like, well, I like that analogy. I'm going to keep that one.
For even if it's not true, it's
not true. It makes sense to me. A fish rots from the head down, and it's the same thing for a business. But it's the same is true in a large real estate transaction as well. And so, John, this is why it was so important that you and I were very much aligned when we started this company, to be able to, be in the same spot from where we want to take this business, and how do we want our team to look like, how do we want our buildings to look like. And so that alignment was critical, that we're on the same page. And it started in that lobby. We were in the hotel there, that we rented a main floor suite, and we had this big boardroom that we sat down and we said, okay, what do we want this business to look like? And we created that alignment from the get-go, and then we started building the team around that vision.
Well, and that's it, right? Because it all starts with vision. And I would say that's it's definitely your top strength, and you have many strengths, but that clarity of vision is so important. And, I think that's why we ended up becoming partners. It's like, I like the operational components. I like the problem solving and the system creation, but you just got that ability to see 5-10 years into the future. That is really a rare gift, and you use it very well. And so even for me, you'll remember that initial conversation we had. I just let you know I had left my prior company, and I think it was, just a scheduled call. I didn't really have an agenda going into it, more just to give you a heads up. And, you kind of coming to me and us talking through, even before that boardroom meeting you just described, right? And it just felt so natural, because you were already thinking, once again, 10 years into the future, and what you wanted Faris Capital to look like, and the impact we wanted to have on residents. And that's really what caught my attention, because, the investors are like super critical, and they are, really, really important. Let's be very clear there. But that realization that at the end of the day, if we don't do a great job for the residents, the investors will suffer. Mm-hmm. And so that vision, I think, was really what won me over, because, initially it's like, we're just going to be buying buildings and raising rents. No. We're going to be improving life. We're going to be making a better living experience for these residents. And we're seeing that play out in action at our buildings. In fact, Mark, I haven't even shared this story with you, but we actually got a 3-star review at one of our properties, and we've only gotten 5-star reviews since we took it over. So I was like, what is this about? And the review was actually good. It was one of those, probably just a tough person that never gives a 5, and probably rarely gives a 4. But because we had the clarity of vision around the best living experience in the world, there was something in there that I just read, and I was like, okay, it feels like maybe we missed something here. So I follow up, and I think it's so critical here, just so our investors understand, if you're listening to this, we see every single review, every single survey, Mark and I. It's not like, something somebody reports on 6 months down the line. I get them in real time. And, I reached out to the property manager and the regional, and within 5 minutes, they were over at the person's house, and it just came down to a simple miscommunication. They filled their form out online, clicked the wrong button, and we offered them a solution, and that review got updated. And so, but that vision, right, that clarity around, it's all about that resident experience. And then we lived it, because when I saw a resident was having a not great experience, how do we fix this today, right? And so that ability to set the vision, and not only set the vision, Mark, but your ability to communicate it so clearly and simply. It's not like a thesis we have to read here, or like a 100-page document. It's a very simple, our vivid vision's 2 pages, which I would say when we started, it was 5 or 6, but we got it narrowed down. But that simplicity in the message, and it allows the team just to understand. So when they see that, what I just mentioned, that 3-star review, it wasn't like, what do we do? It was just so clear, because the vision was already set. We knew exactly what we needed to do in 2 seconds. So I would say that is, in really for any leader, if you don't have that vision, find somebody who does. But, that ability to communicate clearly and simply is, I think, the key factor there.
Yeah, for sure. And actually, John, one of the biggest things when I had pitched this vision to you is like, hey, listen, this is where we want to go. One of the things that was really, we'll say, check the big box for me was your track record of winning. And so this is something, whenever you are working with leaders or you're selecting any sort of operators, I always like looking at, okay, what's your track record of winning? And so anytime we hire somebody, the way that I like interviewing is, I'm like, tell me your full story. Where were you born? And take me through your life, and take me through some of the challenges you had to overcome and some of the wins. And I'm looking for a track record of, I bought my first house when I was, X age. I put myself through high school. I won a championship in high school, or I was competitive in sports. And there's like this track record of winning. And it's like, winners just know how to win. And so for me, it's like, I don't want to bet on somebody that has a track record of blaming people. I want to bet on somebody that has a track record of winning. And so that's where, when you're selecting any sort of, we'll say, leader or group or investment, you always look at, okay, the leadership that's running it, and that track record. And so that was something that, John, you and I both, we had a track record of putting our heads down and working through the hard, where we came out and, respectively, top teams in each of our nations as well, from a production standpoint. And so that was like a big thing.
That's right. We always say, success leaves clues, right? And so that life story, you're picking up those clues. And, you said something there, whenever I'm interviewing somebody, and there's a way you can tell a story where you maybe were dealt the wrong deck, a hand of cards or whatever, or maybe, something happened with the leadership at the company you're working for, and it didn't go great, right? But you can still tell that story in a way where you're not pointing fingers and blaming others. And I would say, Mark, that is my number one red flag when I'm in an interview. When anybody starts talking negatively about their prior company or prior boss, once again, you can describe that situation without going negative. And I think it's like, well, this is what I learned versus, well, this was what happened to me, right? And so, because that actually speaks to the next point, where like the decisiveness under pressure, right? Because when you're in any kind of business, or really just living life in general, challenges are going to come your way. And that ability to be effective in those pressure situations. And so when I hear negativity, what I'm hearing is you cracked under pressure potentially, right? But, deals move fast. I mean, Mark, we've seen some situations, and I would say the Charleston portfolio, our second deal was really our second and third deal. When we closed on that, We received that offer on a Thursday, underwrote it that afternoon, reviewed it as a team Friday, booked travel, flew in Monday, and had the LOI out the door Monday afternoon. Now, listening to this, you might say, gosh, that was fast, but we didn't skip any steps. I mean, it was like over the weekend, we're reviewing the deal, we're looking at rent comps, we booked in the tours, we did everything we needed to do, but we had to do it in that 5-day period, because if we didn't, we would have lost the deal, or it would have been publicly marketed the following Thursday. And there's times where you have that kind of time period, or occasionally maybe a broker says, geez, we got this deal. I forgot to send it to you, but the call for offers is next week. So that ability to move quickly while still making good decisions is critical. We've had situations where sellers have changed their mind on us like a day before going under contract and pulled the listing off the market. And we could have all spazzed out and lost our mind for 2 or 3 weeks. No, we just got back in. We started underwriting deals and looking for that next opportunity. Market changes, right? There's just so many surprises that are coming around every corner we turn. And so knowing how to assess risk, remain calm, and then trust your process. And that's the key factor. And I guess we'll get to that component, but you have to have that process in place, right? So with that process, you trust the process, you work the process, and you make the call. And, I'm a big reader, as you know, Mark, and it's actually from a fiction book, actually, Bonfire of the Vanities. But one of the characters says, I don't know if I make the best decisions, I just make a lot of decisions. And statistically speaking, some of those decisions will be great decisions. And I think about that a lot, because as a leader, every day a team member is asking you or I for something, or to make a decision, or to make a call on something. And if we got kind of caught into some, analytical perfectionistic mindset or mode, it would paralyze the whole company. So it has to be thoughtful decisions, but the ability to make quick decisions. So that decisiveness is a key leadership factor.
Well, and that's where the vision, a strong vision and core values so for the listeners, we have 5 core values on Faris Capital. So we have a genuine love of people, making wise choices. We have operational excellence. We have first-class service, and we have speed of execution. So those are our 5. And so when we're making decisions, we're always like, okay, let's filter them through those core values. Let's filter them through the mission to go full out for investors, provide the best investing experience in the world. And then on the resident side, it's the same thing, but best living experience for residents. And so we filter through those, which helps us make better decisions on an ongoing basis. But yeah, John, there was recently that deal where we flew our entire team out. We flew them out to Atlanta. We did the full check. We spent, this was thousands and thousands of dollars for us to actually make this happen. And right before best and final, the phone conversation or the buyer interview call, it was like, we're pulling it off the market. And it's like, you know what? Okay, take the sting. Okay, were there any key lessons after action review? Or were there any lessons that we could have learned from that? It's like, okay, take them and then move on and get back in the saddle as fast as possible. And I think from a leadership standpoint, that's really important, that the team sees you get back on the saddle and move. And that's where, John, you and I were like, immediately, we're like, let's get next. What's the next one? Let's go. Let's move on. And so I think decisiveness is important as well. But then also, how do you handle, we'll say, challenges when they arise? Because everybody's looking to you as the leader as well.
Yeah. And I remember that moment, because when we found the news, it literally came like first thing in the morning. So we were on our morning huddle, and Joe Lowry, our acquisitions guy, shared it with us. And, there was a moment of, even for me, where I'm like, all right, we're going to have to do some new things. And you're like, nope, just keep working the process, man. Work the systems, which we know broker connects are the main thing that result in deal flow. So let's just ramp up the amount of broker connects, right? Just go back to the process. And so when you have those systems and you have that vision and that clarity, it's easy to kind of, get back on the saddle, to use your analogy there, right? It's not, when you get knocked down, it's how fast you can get back up, right? In life.
And it's okay. I think it's okay to get like, oh man.
Oh, for sure.
Bugger, right? You kind of go off and whatnot, but it's, I think we got back in the saddle real quick there. And
I usually try to, because I was expressing my frustration, but in a way where we were kind of laughing. I'm like, those time wasting, SMBs. But we're getting back on it, man. And it's funny how life works, because some of the deals we're circling today, I might like even better. It's just, you never know what's right around the corner. It could be a good surprise, just the same as a potential, whoops, I didn't see that one coming, right? So life has a funny way. I think when you do the right things and you do the right things daily, and you have that clarity of vision, life takes care of us, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
Um,
100%.
communication, Mark, is so critical with leadership.
Hmm.
And, one thing that really you taught me, I will say, is, I mentioned it before, I like to read. And so, my vocabulary or whatever. And it's like, in sales, sometimes I would use that to my advantage, just being intelligent. They could see my competency through that. But I remember when I wrote our first ebook, you and I were collaborating on that together, and I would send over my chapter and I would look at yours, and it was like, man, you're in a good way. It was just so simple, and I was trying to overcomplicate it. And I feel that you have a great way to just communicate very plainly and simply. And it's something we've now instilled across the organization, because we've touched on this topic before in podcasts, but people get into these terms of art that only people in the industry really understand or know. And we also know human psychology is such that a lot of people are afraid to ask the question, what does that mean? And so our team's no different, right? And so when we're communicating with our team, we're communicating with our investors, our residents, just not dumbing it down, but just speaking clearly, speaking straight, just make it easy to understand. And timely is another big one, right? And I would say, that's something that we had at Mark Spain Real Estate. I know you're big on it, Faris team, but it's like, when we see something, we say something. And, you and I both have this experience, and it's not like somebody, was a jerk in the meeting, but sometimes you're in a huddle and you just recognize somebody's just a little checked out or a little bit off. We don't just let that sit. We pick up the phone, or hey, can you hang back after the meeting? And, it's from a place of care, but it's like, hey, I noticed you seem a little off today. Everything okay? And if they maybe did do or say something that was inappropriate, right, we're going to direct that just very as quickly, and not hiding from bad news. So I think this communication component, it also relates to our investor updates, right? We don't hide from bad news. We send recap emails. We have weekly same page meetings with every team member, where we're not only talking about what's happening in the business and their metrics and their quarterly priorities, but we're also just checking in with how they're doing. Life is going on around us, right? Most of our team members are married or getting married, and they have kids, and there's just life stuff. And so those things can have a work impact. So when you make a space where we're not forcing people to talk about this stuff, but if they want to open up and say, hey, I've got some personal challenge going on, maybe we can recommend a book, or maybe I've gone through something similar in my life with my kids, right? And sharing that thing. So just having that kind of open transparency where a team member feels comfortable and confident that they can share things that are going on with you and that you've got their back. It's huge. So communication is a critical component of leadership.
For sure. Recently, I went to this talk, and he was a billionaire talking. He's like, when he became CEO of his company, he's like, I was trying to make everybody know how competent I was. That was his mission.
Yeah.
And then over time, he wasn't getting traction. And so he realized that what was more important was that he communicated effectively, that he cared about the people he was leading and what was best for them. Like, he had their best interest at heart. And so when he flipped that, everything changed. He ended up getting the following that he wanted. And so that's where any sort of leadership, and that's where, John, for us, I mean, thinking about our investors when we're making decisions, that we're looking out for their best interests as well. But that works within the organization as well, or any sort of leadership or organization. It's like the leader needs to be able to clearly show and communicate. It's one thing to think it. It's another thing to show whoever they're leading that they have their genuine interest at heart. And I think that is such a good lesson that I took from that billionaire. A couple other quick points there on leadership is the ability to have tough conversations. You mentioned this earlier about, we deal things in the moment. And so that was one of the things that I found about the best leaders that I had with me. I was like, what makes them different? And the number one thing that I found, they generally cared about people that they were overseeing, but they could have tough conversations, crucial conversations. And there's a good book, Crucial Conversations, out there that I think it's Gary Chapman that wrote that, but I highly recommend that. And then the one other thing I'm going to add here, John, is the ability to be humble and humility. And so that was one of the things that I really, with your skill sets and, what you've accomplished, for us, you and I, we go back and forth and just like we take feedback from each other because we want to grow and develop. And I think that from a leadership standpoint, the ability to be able to take feedback, that's why with our investors and our residents, and John, the Google review is such a great example of that. It's like That's great feedback. That's helping us get closer to our mission. And so if
Mm.
you think you know it all and your cup is, that means your cup is full, it means you can't take any new information in. I think having that cup half empty or half full mindset where it's like, yeah, keep teaching me, I want to keep learning and growing. I think that from a strength of leadership, that's also another really big thing as well.
Oh, it's huge. Patrick Lencioni wrote a great book called Getting Naked. Typical of him, it's in this allegory style about these two rival consulting firms. But, when the leader doesn't know the answer to something, an egotistical leader won't even ask the question, right? Because they want everybody to know how smart they are. But you and I will often be in a deal review and leaning on George and Joe, say, hey, what's your experience with this? I haven't seen this before. Or, can you help me understand that concept a little bit better? Sometimes Joe has like a unique approach to deal structuring that's, maybe newer to us, and it's just like, can you walk me through that? Where, the wrong kind of leader, and I would say they're not really a leader, right? Because they're doing this, but would just fake it and bluff it. And then, maybe hopefully go Google search it later. But that ability to be vulnerable amongst each other, it really creates, and this is, a component here, but that emotional intelligence, which is so critical to leadership. We've got a few minutes left here. I would say, that ability to inspire and hold people accountable at the same time, right? Because, at the end of the day, we are servant leaders, you and I, Mark. We believe in, not asking anybody to do anything we're not willing to do. If we're on the site and we see a piece of trash, we pick it up. It's ingrained in who we are. But it doesn't mean it's all kumbaya around the campfire either, right? We are looking at metrics on a daily basis in the huddles. We're going through the deeper metrics and the level 10 meeting on a weekly basis. And if somebody's missing and there's a group accountability, it's like, hey, what are we going to do about this? How are we going to get back on track? And so it's that ability to manage and inspect what you inspect, but without micromanaging. So it is a bit of a balancing act, right? Because at the end of the day, I want our team to know they're empowered to make those decisions and to do the right things, but we have the structure and the vivid vision in place so they know what the rules of the game are, right? And so we can trust, but we go behind just to make sure it's happening. But it's not in a way where I'm calling the person every hour and go, what are you working on right now? Why is your computer logged off or whatever? That kind of micromanaging that really, will have a negative effect and sort of, unmotivate people, if you will, or disengage them. So that ability to inspire and hold people accountable is critical. And, we've touched on this as an entire topic, right? But the operational excellence, having cadences of meetings where you're meeting regularly, the team knows what to expect, those morning huddles I just mentioned, that level 10 weekly meeting, those same page meetings, and sticking with them. Because ultimately, the second you start going, well, let's just skip this one or skip that one, a year or two goes by and now it's sort of like an optional thing and it's not ingrained in the culture. So having those operational, just, non-negotiables in place, and just everybody knows what to expect on a daily, weekly basis and how they're going to be held accountable, and then give them the freedom to make those decisions and make those things happen for the company.
Yeah, for sure. And the emotional intelligence, or EQ, was what they say, is like the ability to pick up on things not being said. So, this is very much a relational business in regards to building relationships with brokers and property managers and residents, and attracting team members and retaining them as well. It's another thing, retaining them. And you got to be able to read the room. And so I think that's really important, to be able to identify what's being said and what's not being said as well. And I think that comes through really great questions. And if you ask really good questions, generally you'll get the answer that you're looking for. The other thing is the resilience side of this as well. I mean, so this is not for the faint of heart. I'd be not at all. We're dealing with big numbers. We're dealing with hundreds of lives. We're dealing with tens of millions of dollars. And so the ability to push through the hard is something that I'd say is probably one of the most important things from a leader standpoint, because again, they're looking to you to say, are you giving up or are you not giving up? Are you pushing through the hard or not? And I think that resilience is what, when I analyze a lot of the top business professionals, regardless of the industry, there is this resilience or grit. I believe Angela Whitworth, with the W.
Yeah, Wentworth. I think it's Wentworth, the book,
Yeah.
Grit. That's right.
Yeah,
Yep.
she wrote this book, Grit. And I think that is something from a leadership standpoint, people respect and they can follow people that just keep on going. Like the world cheers for the person that keeps getting up after getting knocked down. And that's why I think I'm appealed, and most people are appealed to Rocky, is like his ability to get hit, a million times and then get back up. And nothing seems to hold him back. Right. And I think leadership, that's going to be my last point, John, I'm going to say about that. We could keep going, but I think that hits on a lot of the main topics when it comes down to being a strong leader.
That's right. And, if you're younger in your career, maybe you're, an aspirational investor or an aspirational entrepreneur and you're listening to this, the best advice I can give you is just start being a good leader for yourself. Build out your calendar, structure your follow-up, create a vision for yourself. You had shared with us on the podcast a few weeks ago, Mark, that you do a vivid vision for your family each year. So do a vivid vision for yourself. Look 3 years ahead. What do you want your life to look like? And then structure those activities into your calendar. Hold yourself accountable. It's a great place to practice leadership, leading yourself, leading your own life, taking control, right? So, and I would say, that's what we do, Mark. We borrow frameworks, right? Like we don't get to go around and try to invent all this stuff. We read books and we learn from the best, folks like Gino Wickman with the traction system, EOS, a vivid vision. This all came from books. It's not that we invented all this stuff, right? It was just from pursuing knowledge and a better approach to life and a better approach to business. So, I'll tell you, the best consultants in the world are sitting right behind me, this stack of books I got behind me, right? A lot of knowledge for $25 or whatever, or $19.99, or heck, on Kindle might even be $9.99 for some of these books, right? So no excuses in my mind not to study and perfect your leadership.
Yeah, and take action with what you read. I totally agree.
That's right.
$25 is a good investment, but you got to take action. So
that's it.
Well, guys, if you do want to learn more, go to fulloutinvesting.com. Thanks for listening to the show. Please subscribe and share with other high net worth investors that you think will benefit from it. Thanks for tuning in to Multifamily Investor Playbook. We love and believe in you guys. Keep dreaming and investing big.